3, 2, 1, mark. Hello everyone and welcome to the Iron Warrior Cosplay Chainsword tutorial. This tutorial is not only a guide for you to build your very own Warhammer 40k chainsword using my very own chainsword pattern, but also this is a build guide and build video for my very own Warhammer 40k chainsword. I have built so many of these, but never one for myself. For the longest time now, I've wanted my Death Korps of Krieg to have a chainsword, and I've never been able to do it. I've never had it, and I'm like, nope, I'm going to do the chainsword tutorial, the pattern, and what I'm going to do is that chainsword that I built in the tutorial will be mine. I was thinking about giving it away and doing like a fun giveaway, but instead, my Death Korps of Krieg needs one. I haven't got one, so I thought to myself, I've got one cut out. I'm going to keep it. I've kept it for the longest time, and now finally I can build my very own chainsword. I'm really, really excited about it. A bit of info for you guys. This pattern is a lot more involved than the shoulders and the Krieg gas mask. There's a lot more work to this. So I suggest you watch this video once in its entirety. Write down the materials that you need that will be coming to you shortly. Those materials then, get them ready. Once you have it all ready, print out my pattern. And there you go. You are ready to rock and roll. You can follow this tutorial. And this tutorial will be going in a lot of detail. But there will be cuts, obviously. I'm going to cut it up. I'm going to make sure there's some time lapses and stuff. I'm going to try and make sure that it's not too long, but that all the very important information that you guys need is in the video. Whereas, like, if I'm going to be gluing, like just gluing the strip of foam or something, I'm just going to either time-lapse it or just cut it out. And then I'll just tell you that I've glued it. So, yeah, that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to edit this together like that. I will make sure that this link goes out on the item description on my Etsy post for the pattern. And then I'll also be sure to link this tutorial video everywhere with a link to the Etsy. So everyone will be able to find the video and find the Etsy link together so that everyone can actually get the tutorial, because I've had 2 people so far build the shoulder pattern and the gas mask pattern and not have a tutorial because they didn't know where it was. So I'm going to try and share that around and make sure that they're both together every time I post them. So from me, Iron Warrior Cosplay, I really hope you enjoy this video tutorial because I'm going to have such a blast. So let's get started. Hello everyone and welcome to the workbench. Here we go. This is it. This is building the chainsword. But first of all, the things you're going to need. First thing you'll need is some 10mm EVA foam. And that's what you'll need to build this chainsword, is 10mm EVA foam. You will also need a ruler, some sellotape, pair of scissors, hot glue with a glue gun, super glue, a craft knife or a scalpel of some sort, a pen, a large box cutter or a big Stanley or whatever you've got. I've got this extendable, this monster of a blade. A 15mm, 1 meter long wooden dowel. That's 1 meter long and 15mm across. Wooden dowel, very lightweight, very strong. Some amazing contact cement from cosplayshop.be. I can't recommend them enough. Other contact cements are available, but these guys are amazing to me. Not only are they amazing to me, they make incredible contact cement. I don't use any other contact cement. Go back, look through all my videos, you'll see cosplayshop.be, their contact cement is next to incredible, and I love it. Get this stuff. If you do get anything from theirs, whether it be contact cement or otherwise, tell them Iron Warrior Cosplay sent you. It would really mean a lot. Cutting mat, and finally, the chainsword pattern by Iron Warrior Cosplay. I also want to give a huge shout out to Mark once again for making my light burn laser file look this incredible. Thank you so much, Mark. You're a legend. I cannot thank you enough. So once you have all of this together and like ready to go, you are about to ready to start. So let's get on. What you're going to need is a pair of scissors, a scalpel, some tape, a ruler, and the Iron Warrior Cosplay pattern. Let's go. All right, so you've got your scalpel, your scissors, your clear tape, and your ruler. From the pattern, you will need page 7 of 7, page 6 of 7, page 5 of 7, and page 4 of 7 to make the main body of your Warhammer 40k chainsword. What you will do is you will take your pair of scissors or scalpel. I prefer scissors. You use a ruler if you use a scalpel or anything just to protect yourself. Cut around the blue line all the way around the shape. You do that with every single piece. Be sure not to skip any pieces because the end pieces are scaled correctly so that it all goes together properly. And you do that with every single piece all the way up. Cut them all out perfectly. You will see dashes on each piece. There'll be a line and a dash on each one. These are just to indicate the overlap for the paper. Okay, so here's an example for you. Page 7 of 7, 6 of 7. When you've cut out the tip of the chainsword, and you've cut out one of the middle pieces of the chainsword, when you go to put them together, the very end of this piece, the very flat end of this piece, you will line up this straight solid line to these two dashed lines. So you'll line that up like that. So imagine the end of the paper is the end of that. You'll line them up perfectly like that, making sure you have a perfect line going all the way through. You will then do the same here, where you will cut this middle piece out, and there's two dashed lines there. You'll get this piece, which you'll notice has a smaller gap than this gap. You will take the very end of part B and line them up to the two dashes on part B that goes on to part C. When you've done all that, you can tape them together with some tape. Then get your scalpel out and cut out this circle here. When you draw that later, that will be a guide for gluing, okay? So, once you've done that, you will be left with an absolutely amazing piece known as the main body, like this. So, this is what your chainsword body will look like. It'll have a flat end here. Part A and part A will be together. Part B and part B will be together. And part C and part C will be together. Once you've done that, you can transfer this to foam and draw around it and cut that piece out. I recommend cutting all the paper parts out first before continuing to foam. So, moving on to the other paper parts of this tutorial. With your pattern in hand, you will need page 1 of 7 and page 2 of 7 for this next bit. You will need to cut out a set amount of each of these parts. And with these set parts and pieces, you will be able to recreate the exact chainsword that I have already built. Now, with these two patterns, you will need a ruler, a scalpel, a pair of scissors, and these are what you'll need to cut out these individual parts and pieces before you continue to foam. Once you've cut out all these pieces out of paper, you will be then ready to transfer them to EVA foam. Okay, now with EVA foam, you can lay out the patterns as best as humanly possible, but try and utilize as much of the foam as possible. So making sure there are no big gaps. If you can fit something small between something, fit it in between it and then cut it out. Now, I used to do this. I used to have paper patterns and cut them out. I still occasionally do use paper patterns, like for my Krieg shoulders and such, but obviously I've created those in Lightburn using my laser to cut out most of the parts. Well, once you've gotten these pieces of paper cut out, such as the chainsword body and the like, and you've transferred those to foam and you've cut those out, you will be left with something that looks like this. And here we have it. This is what you will be left with. You will have your dowel and you'll have all of these parts ready. Now, before we continue, I am going to show you how many parts and pieces you will need. So, take page 2 of 7 and 3 of 7 out of this bundle. Page 2 of 7, you will need the following. 1 engine cover. This engine cover, you will then cut out these 3 centerpieces, which are these 3 centerpieces here. Once you have those 3 cut out, you can move on to cutting out 2 of these circles, which will be used as detail pieces later, where you drew these on to the side of your chainsword body. And then finally, 2 of the side detail pieces for the rear of the chainsword. That's page 2 of 7. You will then need page 3 of 7. Page 3 of 7, you will need 20 chainsword teeth. That's 20 of those. The reason there's 20 is because they get laid out specifically so they don't look too crowded. There's not too many of them. They look correct. So 20 of those. 6 of these dowel supports that I've created. 6 of those. Then finally, for the detail parts, 2 of these little squares. And then for the body pieces, you will need 2 of these large side covers for the chainsword engine, if you will. Once you have gotten these cut out, you'll pretty much be ready to rock and roll. All right, so here we are. Now then, it's time to build. So I've sat down in a comfortable position and I've gotten a few things ready. The first thing I wanted to show you was this is the chainsword pattern here. And as you can see, it fits directly on top of the chainsword body that was cut out by my laser. So all the patterns and everything you can see all line up correctly with the pattern, which is pretty much the most amazing thing ever to me. Don't get me wrong, I know it's laser and then transferred to PDF by Mark, but I still can't get over like the accuracy of the laser compared to the paper, and even, you know, the fact that I've just taped those together, it still works. I think it's just incredible. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Now, with the template, make sure that when you are cutting out the EVA foam, when you lay this down and you've got the chainswords facing up, draw your circle there and cut it out. When you're done, flip the pattern over to the blank side, draw the circle there and then cut that out. The reason being is that circle will give you an indicator of the outside of the chainsword. So you know that that circle here that I've laser etched in is the outside of the chainsword. I've even written the word in on these two so that people know, or I know, which side is which. Now, the circle also helps indicate that, but I still have written it there just so, you know, I've got a marker of what's going on. Next to me here as well, I have the 2 chainsword side covers there, and I have my ruler. The reason I have my ruler is for this. I need to tell you guys that the next step of this is the following. Take your ruler, and from the very end of the chainsword body on the outside, so there's in, this is on the outside, measure 80 millimeters. Measure 80 millimeters in, okay? Then draw a line. I've already done that with a marker pen, so it's 80 millimeters in, and do that on both of these. There's a reason for that. That line is what you glue up to, right? And once you've glued up to that line, you will then be able to glue the chainsword pieces together like so. So then that way, these 2 pieces line up the same sides, both sides, and that way then there's no, your chainsword won't sit like this then, like, you know, with one side longer than the other. So the best way to do that is measure 80 millimeters in, and then that's where you'll glue up to. So make sure when you draw your line, by the way, you don't go over to the very edge of the line. The 80 mil line for this one sits just exactly where that line ends, and that's where I will be gluing this part. So 80 millimeters in and then glue that. So we're going to start now. If you guys are excited, I know I am. I really am. So I'm going to get my contact cement. I've got my window open. Don't know if you guys can hear, but there's some work going on outside the workshop today, and I was really gutted because they make so much noise, but it's okay. There's work going on outside the workshop today. So we are going to start gluing. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to build our chainsword. Now, with the glue on the outside, you will take your engine cover, and the really easy way of figuring out what goes where is this curve here, the curve on the bottom of this, always goes to the end of the chainsword. So if you glue it like that, this bit is too tall for this anyway, whereas this bit is pretty much bang on the exact same size. So you can tell immediately what goes where, right? Now, this glues onto this, just like I said, and on the other side of this, there's no markings. You don't have to worry because the inside of this doesn't get seen. So it doesn't matter how much, you obviously don't cover this whole thing with contact cement, but cover this patch here from like this line back with like contact cement. That's how I've always done them. There is, obviously there's a certain amount of like measuring and making sure there's like, no overrun with the contact cement and stuff. But when it comes to like inside facing like seams and stuff like that, or inside gluing parts, it really doesn't matter like where you glue stuff, because in the end, nothing gets seen on the inside, and primarily the inside is going to get covered with some hot glue and stuff later on anyway. So I do that. And then with this piece as well, it's exactly the same, except you have to make sure you do the inside. Because remember, guys, this is the outside of the chainsword. This is the inside of the chainsword. And you have to make sure that when you're gluing it, you glue it like that. So these two pieces go together. And then same with these two pieces, they go like that, you see. So I have to flip that over. But if I glue that like that, you see how the chainsword's the wrong way? So this is where you have to really keep an eye on the orientation of things and how things go. So please be aware that when you glue this together, that this curve is facing away and that this piece is on top like that, okay? So I just want to make sure I've done it myself. I wouldn't be saying it if I haven't done it myself, Because obviously, I'm not going to tell everyone that I'm absolutely perfect, because even though I've got laser cut parts and stuff, do you know how many times I've accidentally, glued something to something else the wrong way around or on the wrong side? Trust me, it's happened. Do you know the trouble I had with my bolter, my new fancy bolter that I laser cut and etched and everything? I accidentally glued the wrong side of the etching panel, and I was absolutely gutted, and because it was contact cement, I couldn't really get it off quickly or nicely, so I ended up just having to recut it, which is a shame because it was such a large piece. But yeah, anyway, we are going to crack on. I'm going to let these dry, and I shall be back with you guys in a moment. Okay, it's been a little bit of time now, and it is time to glue these together. Now remember, to glue right up to the line, and try and keep it as straight as possible. Use your fingers to really make sure that this is straight. Once you're happy with it, press it down nice and hard. And that's one side. And same goes for this. Actually, hold on, here's a tip for you. I do this quite often. I line up the two pieces that I've cut out, and then I make sure that I have got it right by making sure that these two are lined up as well as possible. Oops, the contact cement is grabbed. So put that back to where it was. Just make sure that's like that. There we go, right up against the line. Squash that down, and you are already on the way to making your chainsword. So next up, is quite a fun bit, but also a bit that I have not added to the pattern because there's just no need to. The next bit now is to cut out strips of 10mm foam. There was no point adding the strips of 10mm foam to the pattern because of their length and how much paper they'd be used. I just thought there was no need for it. I can just explain it in the tutorial. So if you're going to get this pattern, be sure, tell your friends to follow the tutorial because there are some extra little bits that you need to know before we continue. All right, so next, cut some strips of 40mm wide 10mm foam. Just cut some strips of them because these will be used as building blocks inside the engine cover in a moment. I'll show you those. So I've just cut 2 strips of 40mm. So 40mm wide, 10mm foam. Doesn't matter how long they are. Then cut a 20mm wide strip of 10mm foam. That, you know, just cut it longer than what you need because I always do because there's overhang and I like to cut that at an angle. So don't worry so much about like this overhang, you can just cut that yourself. But the next bit now will be to glue this piece in. So this, as I said, is 20mm wide. That's an important part, 20mm wide and longer than the chain body. So when I say the chain body, ignoring this bit, it needs to just be longer than the actual chain body panel on the side here. Another piece, which is just, it's just a piece that, again, I couldn't add to the pattern because every chainsaw is going to be different and you have to make these to whatever you've got currently set up on the chainsword. But this is a 110mm like long, 40mm wide, and it has a 15mm hole in it for the dowel. That's 10mm from the top and 10mm from both the sides. So you know like roughly where to drill it. But the reason being is this will fit into here because of this, the height of it, like the actual height of this being 110 will fit into there perfectly fine. But where the hole goes is entirely up to how you've built your chainsword. So I didn't want to add this piece onto the pattern because this piece is going to be different every single time. The reason I've already like pre-drilled this is because I just added it onto the dowel, checked it, and then just drilled it. It was super, super quick. But I just wanted to explain that to you. If you do want to copy this piece exactly, it's 10mm foam, 40mm wide, 110mm tall, and the hole is 10mm away from the sides. So that's 10mm away from both sides and 10mm from the top and a 80mm from the bottom. That's where the hole needs to be. If you want to copy this piece exactly, but I know you won't need to because every chainsword I've ever built has been different, hence why I can't make this piece like the same every time. What I did try to do was make the hole a bit too big and this a bit too tall and a bit too wide, and then I was just going to cut it to the size I needed, decided against that and just said I'm just going to cut this by hand every chainsword I make. So just wanted to clarify that with you guys and make sure that you all know that that's what you need. So just to reiterate, a 20mm wide piece of 10mm foam, longer than the chain body, and 2 or 3, if you want, it's entirely up to you, 2 or 3 40mm wide pieces of 10mm foam to fill out the body when we need them. So I wanted to just add that in to make sure that you guys have all the information that you could ever need to build this chainsword. Moving on. The next job now is to get the contact cement, and it's to glue this 20mm wide long piece to the chainsword. All right, so these have had time to dry now. My plan, like I've said, is to make sure most of this is inside this. So I'm going to leave a little bit on the end here. And the way I do this is I line this up with a little bit of overhang, and I feel the edge of this all the way. Now I'm going to turn this around so I can see. I'm going to line this up on the edge all the way along the chain body. I call the chain body on a real chainsword, it's like the cutting bar, if you will, but obviously Warhammer chainswords don't really have a cutting bar per se, like one that you can remove like the ones on real chainswords. I think you can probably take the covers off the sides, but I don't think it'll be like a bar that removes, much like the ones on chainswords in real life. That is what the top of your chainsword will look like. As you can see, it does bend and flop, but it'll be straightened up soon, but that's what it looks like. And right at the very end here, you can cut that off. I'm going to use my knife. You don't have to be too overly delicate with it. I usually try and cut it a little bit proud if I can. There we go. I cut it a little bit proud. And then once that's done, have a look at your work, make sure it's all pressed together. All right, so with this done, you can now start working on the dowel portion, okay? Now, I have some measurements for you guys that I'm gonna go grab, and those measurements will help you guys with the placement of the wooden dowel. With your wooden dowel, which is 1 meter long and 15 millimeters in diameter, this is the main insert that you will have for this chainsword, and it sits up here with the pieces I'll show you in a moment. It sits up here, and a long time ago I built these chainswords with shorter handles. I didn't use a 1 meter long dowel, I used a much shorter dowel. I used an 830 something, I think it was about 800. It wasn't quite 1,000. But I got asked if I could make the handles longer for the next ones because people wanted longer handles. I've always preferred shorter handles, in my opinion, because I just find them to be, just better and comfier. The handle length, so the handle length from outside the back of this body, so from the very end here, from the very back of this body, from right here, from there to the very tip, all the handles I've done for the new chainswords are 225 millimeters long, leaving you with just this little gap here at the end. And that little gap is very important. The reason that gap is important is I never wanted this dowel to be right up here as close as possible to the tip, because I want these to be as con-safe as possible. When I hot glue these in, I hot glue a large glob of hot glue here to make sure that the dowel can't come out or hurt anybody. So it's why I've made the handles 225, let me bring it in a little bit, 225 millimeters long, and it leaves me with a nice gap right at the very end of 25 to almost 30 millimeters at the end there. That's how I like them. The pieces you're going to need next are the 6 pieces for the dowel holders that are on page number 2 of 3. 3 of 7, sorry. Page number 3 of 7, right? And page 3 of 7, you will have this. These are the 6 pieces that are going to hold the dowel securely in place while you work on the chainsword. Now, I have designed these roughly. They're not like, super accurate, but the foam stretches enough that you can get these over the dowel and then spread them out nicely along the dowel to support the dowel while it's inside the chainsword body, so that you don't have to worry about the handle coming out or anything, okay? No way, am I gonna get 6 of 6? Okay, that's interesting. So every time I've done this, because of my manhandling, like pushing them on and everything, I do tend to break one of them and I have to recut them. All these are fitted on great, which makes me very happy. So anyway, I'm gonna pop these in like this, and first thing I'm gonna do is measure 225 from the end here, like so. Right, I'm going to measure 225 from the end like so, and I'm going to just measure again because I've moved some things. 225. I'm going to get my pen. Where's my pen? My pen is here. My pen is right here. I'm just going to mark the end here where the dowel goes. I'm even going to mark the end of the dowel here just as a rough guide. And now you can move these along the dowel slightly even apart. There's no pattern or anything for this. There's no like, you don't have to worry too much. But I will give you guys a tip in a moment on what not to do because I've learnt my lesson in the past. Okay. Yep, that's fine. Okay. All right. Okay. Now then, what I need to tell you guys about what I did in the past, because I've learned a lot of this so that you guys don't have to. I can just explain to you what to do. When, for example, we'll need to cut another strip of foam, but this is in a test piece, for example. When the test piece goes in, sorry, when the chain belt goes in, it'll sit like this, but it has to curve here. It has to curve at the top here. I put one of these too far forward one time, and there wasn't enough room for it, and I had to cut it off and like tear it off for one of the chainsaws I did very long time ago, one of the first ones I did. So with that, just to let you guys know, try and keep this end one a good distance away from the end so that when you put this on, there's plenty of room for the piece of foam to bend around and go along. Now, while these are in, it's always a good shout to just check if they sit proud at all. They might a little bit because obviously the dowel is pushing outwards a touch, but you don't have to worry too much about that. But if one or two of them stick out too proud, because I cut these all by hand, if I've cut them a little bit too proud, then I like to make sure I recut them so that they're a little bit thinner. One of them, this one here, is sat a little bit proud. So if you bear with me, I'm just going to jump over to my bandsaw. I'm going to cut a thin sliver off, and then I'll be back in a moment. All right, I've just fitted that one again because it was too proud. Everything else seems to fit nicely. Another good way to check if anything's proud is to lay it down like this. There will be a slight lump in the foam, by the way, from the dowel, but you don't have to worry too much about that because when you do glue things together, the foam will push in a little bit, so it's not to worry. Once you paint it as well, no one will see anything, so you're okay there. So looking at this, I'm going to push that on a little bit further. Looking at this, I'm quite happy with how this looks. If you get your pen and just mark roughly where you want each of these to be. Just mark a line down both sides of them. Again, you don't have to be too accurate with the lines, just rough and ready. Once you do that, remove the dowel and those. Get your contact cement, cosplayshop.be, and just paste on some contact cement. Again, contact cement, if you haven't used it before, thin layers, thin layers, always thin. Don't apply too much, always a thin layer. You can always scrape off, like I just did, scrape off what you don't need and then just move it on to the next part, you know? It just needs to be nice and thin. The hot glue later on, literally later on in a moment almost, will do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of keeping things in place and making sure that nothing comes apart, okay? Now with each of your pieces here, I'm actually going to bring the cutting mat a bit closer, glue a nice thin amount onto each piece of foam. And the reason I do it facing away from me like this is because I'll be flipping it over to match the chainsaw in a moment, but also so that if I apply any pressure downwards, it all just pushes down onto the cutting mat instead of gluing these individually off the 1 meter dowel. I'm gonna just apply a little bit amount there. And the last one, a little bit there. Now, I just want to take a quick moment while I let these all dry to just say a massive thank you to everyone who has supported me since I started doing patterns and stuff. Everyone who's bought a gas mask pattern and tagged me or sent me photos of their gas mask telling me how easy the pattern was and how much fun they had building it. I really do appreciate that. I like the people who have used my pattern to modify their gas masks or their existing ones. Really appreciate that. I love seeing what you guys do. I would also like to see the same with these. I'd love to see what modifications you guys do. I'd love to see what kind of stuff you guys do with the paint jobs or different ways to build them. There's some slight modifications that I'm going to do today that I can pass on to you guys so that you guys can see. I'm just going to check what time it is just to see how things are going. Oh wow, yeah, I have been filming a very long time. Anyway, so giving those time to dry, you can now check if everything lines up right, and it does. So now you can apply contact cement to the top of each one of these and then to the top of each one of these. So while I let these dry, once again, I'm going to recap on what we've done so far. Stage 1 was to cut out these side panels of the chainswords and draw the circles onto them so you know where to glue things to next. Then glue on these side panels to these, there and here. Then cut strips of foam. This is a 20mm strip. I cut it longer than what I need so I have enough room to play with. Then the dowels. Make sure each of these dowel holders goes on, space them out, draw them out, glue them, glue the tops, let them dry, glue the top of this, let it dry, and then glue it all together. That is the next step. Now, before we move on to this gluing stage, I will like to just let you guys know again that this strip at the top here, this 20mm strip, you will need to cut another one of these shortly. While you guys are letting this dry, if you're at the same stage as I am, if you're building right now, so if you're building at this very moment with me, like building along, let these dry, go cut another 20mm strip of this and make sure it's too long as well. So that when you cut the angle, you can put it up against that. We'll check the distance and we can cut it there. Then we can start gluing the teeth. There's a few more steps to go, so be sure not to jump ahead a few steps, but just prepare for the next amount of building. I'll be back with you guys shortly. Let's do this. Okay, so it's now time to glue this onto here. Now, as you can see, this is bowing upwards because this is 20mm and this is flat on the table. My advice to you is to turn this and put it up against the table with the cutting mat underneath it so that you can start gluing from the front to the back, and by the time you get to the back you can just use your hand to press it down. So let's pop this in. I'm going to stand up for this one. Hook that onto the edge of the table there. I'm going to line this up with the top, making sure my line is met up there. Make sure that meets up there. Right, and then press the tops in, and then press the bottom as well, like that, and then I'll press that in by hand, and then these ones I'll press down, like so. And now it's time to check length ways, like that, check the straightness of it. You will find some lumps and bumps in it, but you can correct those, because remember the dowel isn't glued in, so you need to play with the dowel a bit. And remove the dowel. So the dowel's now out. You can now push and glue these all individually. Push the glue in, push the pieces in, try and keep them level. And there we have it. That is the support system for the dowel in the chainsword. The dowel can be removed for now because we have a few little bits and bobs we need to do. I'm really happy with how this is looking so far. Remember, guys, this is my chainsword. This is the one I'll be using for my Deathcore of Krieg. It is now time to officially get this dowel in and glued. Now, there's a few ways you can do this, okay? There's one way I've sort of come to get more used to and prefer, and that is put contact cement inside each of these holes, just a little bit of contact cement, then run the dowel through them slowly. The contact cement then will rub along the length of the dowel, coating it in some contact cement. Then I push it too far than what I need and then add more contact cement onto it and then slowly pull it back through to the marked lines and then let that cure. While that's curing, I will use hot glue between each joint and on the end to secure it. I then have to leave that dry fully to make sure that the hot glue's cooled down and that the contact cement is dry, because the last thing I want is for it to dry too quickly or not be supported enough and that the dowel can turn inside the chainsword. There was a time where I thought putting a small pin in the dowel inside the chainsword to hold it would be better. I decided against it because, again, I want to make these con safe, so all you're going to get is foam and a wooden dowel. That's how safe these will be. So right now, if you bear with me, I'm going to get the glue gun set up ready and warmed up, and then I'm going to get the contact cement into these holes. I'll be back with you shortly. We can do that together. So bear with me one moment, and I'll get the glue gun ready, and I'll get everything set up, and I'll explain everything shortly. Okay, with my glue gun now warming up, I've got my glue sticks ready. I am now going to put contact cement inside each of these, and then a little bit of contact cement on this once it's gone in. So the way I do this is I load up the lollipop stick instead of just a little bit, and I'll pop it in and I'll run it around. Don't worry if there's too much, by the way. This part, you can go a little bit nuts with the contact cement. You don't have to worry too much about it because you're going to want it to, get onto the dowel. If you use a little bit, never apply the contact cement to the dowel after you've done this because you will never get that dowel in. The contact cement will grip. You'll end up just bending and tearing the hell out of your prop. So make sure these are nice and contact cemented. And remember, you need to be a little bit sharpish with this because while the contact cement is wet on the support pieces, you need to pop the dowel in. And it does slide in nice and easily because the contact cement is still very much wet. But as you can see, it's also drying as it goes because of the friction. And each time the dowel passes through, it takes contact cement with it. And make sure that mark is there. Let's move this ruler. Make sure that mark is there. That mark is there. Let me get my ruler before it dries too much. 225 on the dot. Now, you will find that your dowel can still turn a little bit, obviously, because the contact cement hasn't fully cured yet. But what I need you to do now is push it further than what you wanted. Get some contact cement and soak the dowel in front of each of these pieces with some contact cement. A bit better. It's already starting to stick now. I can already feel it getting a bit tight. So now that you've done that, get some of the contact cement, rub it with your finger. Make sure it's gloved finger. Make sure you don't have to wear gloves, but I would recommend wearing gloves with contact cement because it's not nice stuff. I do want to say that you could, if you wanted, build this chainsword with just hot glue. If you are of an age where contact cement is not something you can or are allowed to use. If not, get a parent to help you. Make sure you're in a well-ventilated area. What I'm doing right now is just checking for straightness, by the way. So don't panic too much. I'm just checking for straightness. Got to make sure that everything sits right before I fully commit to the hot glue. There we go. There's always going to be a little bit of a roller coaster in it. Not a lot, not like super noticeable. If it does go up and down like that, then there's definitely something wrong. But I don't know if you guys can see, you know, it's pretty decent. You know, it might bow a little bit. It might, it might like roll a little bit. But I'm talking about up and down. There's no roller coaster in it. I try to keep it nice and level, nice and flat. As you can see, the dowel is pretty straight. Everything seems to be sitting where it's meant to. Every now and again, I will give the dowel a little bit of a turn, and I can already feel it is drying and really gripping. Hopefully by now your hot glue will have started to warm up enough that you can start really going at it with the hot glue. Before I continue, I do want to show you guys some of the best places to hot glue inside these, from experience mainly, and I'll use this to show you. The first is obviously right here at the very end of the chainsword, right at the very tip of the dowel, right? In between each of these gaps here, you don't have to fill it, but just put a decent amount of hot glue here, 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 all the way up. A nice chunk of hot glue. Then once that's dried or cooled down, even flip it upside down and put a bunch of hot glue in under the dowel like that. That will just help it from rotating. Once this has been hot glued, by the way, I do need to make sure that you guys understand that you can, before you do these bottom pieces, you can lift the foam. The foam is still maneuverable enough that you can lift it, but what I don't advise is pushing these pieces down into the hot glue, because what you will get then is on this side you'll get a roller coaster effect. It'll go up and down, and it will not look great. It will look a bit crap. So that's my advice. That's just from somebody who's been doing this for a few years. It's not gospel. Don't panic. It is not like, you know, it's not like the Emperor's word. Don't panic. But what it is some good advice. You know, some good advice. Don't eat yellow snow. That kind of thing. Now, with this all put together like this, my glue gun is warm. It is now time to start hot gluing. Like I said, start at the end here. Don't put too much, but start at the end here. Remember, you can fold this down and get some hot glue underneath and get a really good grab, and then fill in each of these, okay? So, let's do speed of time lapse. and it's pretty solid. Like I said, there's always going to be some foam squeezing and such to do along here to stop like bowing and such like that. But other than that, that's grand. That is actually grand. The next part is the teeth. Now the teeth are a lot more fiddly. This is where you'll need super glue. I would very much recommend super glue. I use the cheapest super glue I can find, but it's still super glue because, well, I'm not gonna lie, I've never really found a cheap super glue to be bad super glue, not yet anyway. But yeah, super glue next to glue the teeth, but also remember when I was telling you, there needs to be another one of these cut. You need another 20 millimeter wide, 10 mil piece of foam to do the belt for the teeth. Okay, so if you bear with me one moment, I'm just going to go get that cut because I haven't got one ready. I'm going to go get that one cut, and then I shall meet you guys back here in just a moment. With your 20 millimeter strip cut, you will need now to check the measurements. Now, remember, these pieces here, the pieces that you cut earlier to hold this wooden dowel, they are the correct length from this 10 millimeter piece downwards, that when this sits in, the teeth will sit just proud and it will look really good. So be sure to cut these as precise as you can, obviously, from the pattern. The pattern is exact. Each square is 10 millimeters and the pattern is exact in terms of almost laser accuracy, accurate, if you will, because it was from a laser file. So, so the first job to do here now is to check this against there, and with where is it? With your blade, check how much of an angle you want here. You can, if you want, by the way, these obviously go against the 10 mil pieces here, but when it comes to here, if you want to pull it forward more and get more of an angle when it comes in or out, it's entirely up to you. Me, I prefer a bit of a steeper angle like this. I'm going to cut this piece gently, like so. So that way now, when I glue that, that will glue nicely into there. Make sure that's all good there. There we go. And that will come out the back like that, okay? So, let me pop this in there. Make sure I've got it all nice and snug. I'm going to move this back a touch, actually. There we go. I've moved it back a little bit. Where's my pen? Oh, it's in my ear. It's where it usually is. I'm going to mark a line here for the curve. So where the curve starts and finishes, I recommend marking a line. At least then that's where you know the contact cement will go, and you can follow that line when you bend it down. I always recommend starting here and then working your way that way. Straight is easy. This curve is a bit more difficult. Now, with that being done, where's my bin? There it is. With that being done, put this back up against here and make sure your line is all set. Make sure it's all lined up. Then run this out and then cut this at the very end, just like you did with that other piece. Again, I cut mine ever so proud, just a little bit more than what I need, just in case. And now it is time to glue the teeth. Here is my pot of teeth that says Chainsword teeth times 20. And there are 20 of these teeth. Each of these get glued on to this piece of foam facing outwards. So I've put my chainsword in front of me, as you can see. This is the end. This is how the chainsword teeth need to go. They need to go facing the correct direction of travel for the chainsword. Now, with this chainsword, for example, the belt will be going this way, up and around, so the belt will be traveling and traveling and traveling, which means the teeth will be cutting this way. So from here downwards, the teeth go like this. There you go. So they go like that. The teeth will be cutting as they come. I did it differently on the chain axe I have. I did the teeth differently. I did the style differently. This particular style was picked by my incredible community, including the one for the Iron Warrior. So yeah, they're all like the custom teeth that I made, and I'm really, really happy with them. So what I like to do is just obviously line them all up. I count them out. There should be 20 of these in total. Make sure you face them the correct way so that you know which way the chainsword is cutting. And I'll be back with you shortly to explain how these all go on to your chain belt and how far apart they need to be to make the chainsword look just right. Okay, so I have put all the teeth onto this. They're all loose. I haven't glued them on. But what I just need to explain to you guys is that this tooth at the very end here, the top part is flat. The very back end where the tooth goes down, that needs to be pretty much bang on the very end of the blade, right? Very bang on there. And then this one right at the very end as well, where the flat piece meets the very front of it, needs to be bang on at the very end. And then between each one of these is not an exact science, but I have worked it out roughly to 10, 11, 12, about 13 millimeters between each one. That's very rough. But the way I like to do it is put one at each end and then just start my way and just spread them out and try to keep them all level. What I've ended up doing is putting my pinky finger between each one of these. And I can never work it out to an exact measurement because every time it's slightly different. So I put my pinky finger between each one of these, and my pinky finger is roughly 15 mil. But there's not 15 mil between each one. If there's 15 mil between each one of them, it would either be, well, I think it'd be too short at the very end. But I've got it down to roughly 13 to 14 mil between each one of them. Some a bit less, some a bit more. But I'm going to try and just work it out a little bit. But once you do that, get them nicely evenly spread. Make sure that, you know, they're all, there's 20. 20 will fit on this perfectly. Just make sure they aren't too close together, because if they're too close together and too bunched up, I've seen some chainswords where there's just so many teeth. It's just unbelievable how many teeth there are. And there aren't that many teeth on a chainsaw. There isn't 20. There's a lot more than 20 because it's obviously a continuous, you know, loop that goes around. But 20 will fit on this segment going from the front to the back, and 20 is what I recommend. If you guys want to do less, you can. If you want to take one out from between each one of them and spread them out even thinner, it's entirely up to you. But I've put 20 on here and 20 works. Now we're going to do a time lapse. There's going to be another time lapse of me gluing each of these teeth on, and we'll be back when I have glued every single one of these on to the chainsword belt. So if you give me just a moment, it'll be seconds for you, it'll be a little bit of time for me. I shall see you all in just a moment. As you can see, I have just finished gluing these on. How cool is this? This can now be glued on to here. This can now be glued on to the actual chainsword itself to create, well, basically the majority of the actual chainsword itself. Now, remember I had this line down here, and then I had this go down all the way like that. The teeth sit out incredibly nice. They sit out just flush, just exactly like the way I like. The top part here, I have noticed I do need to pull forward a bit. I was a bit too far back for my liking, so I'm not going to be following that line perfectly, but it doesn't quite matter right now because I can just draw a new one there and then put a little one here and a little one there. This will all be contact cemented in except for the very tip here, which will be super glued. So what I'm going to do is get my contact cement and contact cement this all the way up. Don't worry about the ends of these, by the way, because the ends of those will also get super glued at the end. So, first things first, contact cement. Right, so time to glue. I'm going to put a little bit of super glue at the very end of this piece. And we are going to get ready to super glue this together. Right, here we go. Make sure you are constantly pushing the blade, or chain even, sorry, up against each of the pillars. That way you know for a fact you've got the correct distance all the way to the very end. Push that down, make sure it's nice and tight. From this side, as you can see, that's all the inner workings and the gubbins. This side looks incredible. Look at that. How cool does that look? I am over the moon with how this looks. This chainsaw looks so clean. Look how nice it looks. The teeth all line up really nicely. One or two of them are like slightly, skew-iff, but that's fine. I can sort those out. Now, like I said, super glue next. Open up this a little bit and put a dab of super glue there. Let it run down. And then push this against that. I'm going to use a touch of accelerator. There we go. And same with this. Touch of accelerator. All right, so this is now glued in. Each of these has been glued down to this. I'm very happy with how straight the chain blade is currently. I'm happy with how it's not like a roller coaster all the way down. There's just a little bit of bowing in the middle, but that's expected. Just gonna clean this contact cement up a little bit with my gloved hand, as always. Touch of overspill on the contact cement. And now you are pretty much ready to glue on the back or side half, sorry, of the chainsword. Now, this bit is very, very fun because it basically creates the body of your chainsword and makes it so that that's it. That's your chainsword. You've pretty much completed the biggest part of it. The next part is all the fiddly bit here, the details, and then you're done. The details are so much fun. You're going to absolutely love it. But right now, I'm just going to tidy this up a little bit, get ready with the contact cement, and I'll be back in just a moment. For this part, I'm now stood up, and we are going to get the contact cement going. As you can see here, you know where to glue around here. Now these are always a bit difficult, so I usually line this up here and then you can see roughly where they go. So I just put a generous amount of contact cement on here. But you also need to make sure that the very lip here is done all the way across to the very end here. And then this as well, all the way from here leading down, as well as the back piece here. So this is how we're going to do it. Let's start off. I'm going to start off by lining these up and just putting a generous spacing of contact cement there so I know it'll stick and I know it'll be in the right place. Now, it is time to apply the side of the chainsword to it. Now, normally I put a piece of foam or scrap paper or sheets of A4 on here and I'll work my way over. But I don't need to today because I have the chainsword itself to do that. So this is how I do this. I'm going to sit down for this one so that I can see. Line up the very back. Oh, see, not very forgiving. The very back of this with that. Make sure the top is level. That's why I use the piece of paper, so that when I put it down, it doesn't shift or anything. There we go. Then you can lift this up and pull the paper forward a little bit. You don't have to use the chainsword pattern, by the way, but it's handy and it's there. And do the same. I can now take this out because I'm confident in the fact that I can get the rest of this done without any issue. Famous last words of Iron Warrior Cosplay while he builds the chainsword on his tutorial. And then that goes like that. And just smooth the top, just smooth where the pieces are. So I'm just gonna there, and there, and there, and there, and there. That's level, that's level. Those are perfectly level. It's not quite as straight as I'd like it, so let's deal with that issue. Squash this down a little bit. That's better. Squash this down a bit. Bend that a little bit. Squash this down a little bit there. That's better. And there is your chainsword body complete. It's a simple little build. There's a lot involved, like I said, but it's a simple, fun little build. And I'm really, really happy with how it's going. Now, remember this piece here? Remember this piece? This is where now you just bend the tooth back, get your knife. I'm going to do it with my knife just to show you guys. And you can cut that off flush so that your chainsword lines up. And you just peel that off and put that back on. There we go. That way your chainsword lines up and the angle is correct. So we're going to move on next now to the main body. But before then, let's take a short break. I shall be back with you soon after I've had some lunch, and I shall see you all in just a second. Okay, we're back. I just had to go do something there super quick, unfortunately, so I got interrupted, but it's fine. I'm back. So, like I was saying, I was talking about this, I was saying, you know, you can make these parts and things like that, right. But to get back on track, I have just glued in the little bridge piece. Remember the bridge piece I was telling you about? I have just glued that in. But the camera wasn't running at the time, unfortunately, so I've just started up again. So the next thing you need to do basically now is just fill this in. Now, there was a time where I would just put a piece of foam in like that. I don't feel it's necessary anymore, considering, you know, everything else that goes into it and, you know, the support stuff on the outside. I think a hollow box inside is better. I did cut one of these before, like a long time ago, and fit this inside also, but it's actually a bit more hassle than it's worth. Because of the amount of like layering stuff I have to do, and you have to make sure you cut it the right height and everything. It can be a bit of a headache, so I avoid putting multiples of that in now. That is now just the end of the handle piece here. But other than that, these need to be custom cut because obviously the handles go to different heights and stuff almost all the time. So custom like heights, custom handles and things like that, that has to be done custom. So does this little bridge piece that shows the teeth going back and through and into the chainsword. So join me now in basically having a quick time lapse where I'm cutting these to size and fitting everything in. All right, so as you guys can see, I'm still just fitting these pieces in. Remember, these are 40 millimeters wide and they just fit in between these two pieces of foam, so you have to sort of build around it. Like I said, it's more involved than the other builds, obviously, you know, with it being a much larger prop for starters. And then also there's a lot of measuring to do. Like, for example, I need to take 10 millimeters off this piece because the 10 millimeter piece that fits on top of it needs room. So this now is shorter, or will be, sorry. This piece will be shorter, and when it sits in like this, and it's shorter than what it is, it will be the perfect fit. So what I'm going to do now is test fit it in so it's like at level, and then take 10 millimeters off. So anyway, with this chainsword sort of at this stage, you can now pretty much like tell yourself that you've built a chainsword, because the rest of it now is detail pieces and not much in the way of measuring and not much in the way of like too much fiddliness. So what you've got left now are the 2 detail pieces on the side, the other 2 detail pieces at the rear, the 3 pieces that I'll show you what to do with in a moment, the 2 side pieces at the very front, and the engine cover. So with that being said, I'm going to grab some scrap foam to fill in here, and I shall be back with you in a second. All right, so take a piece of the 40mm foam you cut and cut it to just roughly the same length as this piece here. So the bit where the engine ends here, this piece here, cut it, just mine's a touch longer, but that's not a problem. Glue that to there. And what you're going to do next is some fun detailing. Take these pieces and glue them to this piece of foam, face down. It's super easy. Put a little bit of super glue on there. Glue this one to the very end, like so. And then glue another one of them. Still shocked that this super glue is still going. To the other end, it doesn't matter what orientation, I'm just doing them differently to show you that there's 2 different ones. Okay. Then flip it over, cut the ends off, like so. So you have this little piece here. Then glue these pieces to the middle. Right? So I'm going to do right now, and you'll see what I'm doing in a moment. There's no signs behind it. You can do whatever pattern you want. You don't have to copy this one. I'll show you. Oh, I think I'm about to run out of super glue for the first time. Holy crap. The super glue's been amazing. Right, there we go. So now just cut the ends of these off as well. And what you've got yourself there is a nice little detail piece for the engine. There you go, it's like a heat sink. It's like a little heat sink for the engine. So what I'm going to do is probably use the last remaining morsels of my super glue. Yes, there's barely any super glue left. Oh my God. It won't be enough to do this, I don't think. Ooh, maybe just about, maybe not quite. Maybe not quite. Damn, that's such a shame. So I'm going to go grab another super glue. My second one of the day. How mad is that? That one of them has lasted this long already. So I'm going to grab another super glue. That's mad that that's lasted that long. Again, these I buy for £1.50 for 12. £1.50 for 12 of these at my local little shop in the village up the road. Oh wow, it's still wet. That's nice. So the other super glue is still wet as well. What I'm going to do, spray a bit of accelerator on the prop itself, pop this right in the middle, squeeze it down, and that will give me a nice little engine detail piece. How cool is that? Now then, the super glue for now can go away because the next bit we got to do involves contact cement. This is such a nice little detail piece. Squeeze that all down. But yeah, that's what those little ridges in the middle of those are for. I just use them to make little detail pieces for the engine cover. Now, for the heatsink for the engine, sorry. So, the next thing you've got to do now is get a pen, contact cement, and your engine cover. The engine cover. Now, the engine cover I've designed quite nicely, okay? The engine cover is designed to sit right up against this here and sits like this and then bends around the entire prop like this, and that's where your nice engine detail bit in here shows through. So, this has been cut quite precisely on the laser, but yours might be a little bit different. But I'll show you exactly the way I do it. I bring this up so that the end of this here is right up against this large square here. I will then raise this up until I can see the edge through the gap of that detailed dome bit here. I will then draw around this piece with my pen, because that is where I'm going to be adding contact cement. Okay, now notice I haven't done the other side. There's no need to right now. The other side will come into its own later. So what I'm going to do is add contact cement to this bit right here, all the way around, including the little lip there. There's not much of an edge there, but it's there. And then all this contact cement in here. Sorry about that. My lunch repeating on me. There we go. Right. And then add contact cement to the opposite side of the engine cover. Doesn't matter which side you start on, by the way. Doesn't matter which side, whether it's the left side of the chainsword or the right side of the chainsword. Does not matter what side you start on. I'm putting a generous amount on this, but I'm going to use my gloved finger to smooth it out and get all the horrible bits off. There we go. There's this horrible dry bit that was on the contact cement because I've left it open a little bit, so it's got a little bit of a scum on top of it, and I need to make sure that that is all gone before I do any of this. There we go. So before I glue this down properly, I need to make sure that it's all covered. Ooh, that bit isn't covered. There we go. A little bit more there. Touch more contact cement right there because I'm missing a few bits. There we go. Now I'm going to let these both dry. Where's my scissors? I'm going to cut this. That's my last bit of my lollipop stick for this one. I'm going to let these dry. And once these have dried, I'll show you how to glue these on and then glue the other side. So I've let this dry now, and my plan now is to butt this up right against the edge here and place it down nice and gently on my lines right there, and then flip the prop over and put some nice even pressure all on there. So I hope right now you guys are still with me and you're still enjoying yourselves, because I tell you what, we are almost done here. I would like to thank you all again for watching this tutorial. This has been such a busy day for me. So now that that's glued, flip your chainsword over, and using the chainsword as like a leverage point, fold this over the same way, making sure you're just covering the part of the engine where this sort of dome is, where this detail piece is. Make sure you're just covering it, because what you're going to do now is make sure it's all straight. You get your pen again, Pen Island. Sorry, you're going to draw around this again. And this is where you're going to add contact cement the second time. This is where you're going to add contact cement to this bit now. Make sure there's contact cement right up to the edge of the lines, so you get all that contact cementy goodness. There you go. And then a little bit up here as well. I know there's not much of a gap there. It's very, very minute. But I still put a bit of contact cement there nonetheless. Just so that there's something there for the foam to grab onto. Normally, I do like, when I do things like this, I do like a double adhesion method where I'll use a bit of super glue as well. But this contact cement is so, it's so good. I have no issues with using just the contact cement for this. The reason I use normally would use a double adhesion for this is because there's a lot of tension when this gets folded over. There's like a fair bit of tension on the other side that has already been glued. But I'm confident in this contact cement, sorry, that I don't need super glue. So we are going to let this dry once again. More dry time. A lot of today has been dry time. A lot of today has also been changing batteries, charging lav mics and making sure everything's running smoothly. Once this has been glued on, it's on to these detail pieces, and you, my friend, will be this close to finishing your Warhammer 40k human scale Chainsword by Iron Warrior Cosplay. Okay, with the contact cement now tacky, you can fold this over, making sure you stay on that line and that you put this right where you measured the lines. I'm a little bit off there. There we go, that's right. And then you can push that down and now pick up the chainsword and squeeze it with both your hands, both sides. Squeeze it nice and hard. You don't want any of it to start coming off. Then push down on these a little bit. That'll widen the top out a little bit and it'll make it look a bit even. Push the bottom in a little bit there. And that is how you get your engine cover, you see? That's how the engine cover works. And inside there is a really fun bit of detail that you did earlier using that piece of 40mm and the pieces cut from the engine cover. So this is what you're currently going to be, this is the stage, sorry, you're going to currently be at. And next, you can move on to the detail pieces, which are super easy. And I'll show you where I put them. Right then, simple start off point. Take one of these circles, put some super glue around it, and a little bit in the middle, and line up with the circle you put at the very beginning. Put that on there. Line that up with the circle. Obviously mine was done by a laser. Squeeze that down. Give it a couple of seconds. Then flip it over. Do the same again to the other detail piece. And put that inside the circle once again. Squeeze that down. Give that a couple of seconds. There we go. Now, I've put the pattern here to show you. Use the cover image of the pattern if you'd like, but I like to put a lengthy piece here. Normally, I would mark out where I wanted it to be. But because this is my chainsword, I feel like just winging it. Because I love just winging it with my chainswords and my props and stuff. It's what I feel like gives my props character, is the fact that I've been like, I'll wing it. I still want it to look decent, you know. For example, I still want these to line up. I still wouldn't mind, you know, them being the same sort of distance from the top if I can, 25. And roughly in the same kind of place. But yeah, I enjoy the randomness of it. I enjoy making my props so that they have, you know, a bit of quirkiness to them. I don't like them being too perfect, But then, you know, don't get me wrong. There's been an occasion where I've been like, nah, perfection. I want absolute perfection. But it depends what prop I'm doing. My Iron Warrior bolter, for example, I wanted that to be perfect, and I feel like to me it is. For me, obviously not. There's bound to be some anorak online saying, "Oh, this isn't quite right. You haven't done this very well." Anyway, then you use the little detail square pieces that you cut out earlier of 10mm foam. A bit too much super glue on there. I'm going to see if I can just do that super quick. And then these I like to line up with the detail piece of the engine. That's how I like to line these up. Like so. And squeeze those until they get themselves all settled in there. And there you have your Iron Warrior Cosplay Warhammer 40k human scale chainsword. That's pretty much it. Now, there are some other details. For example, I, myself, use Evil Ted's molds. Thank you so much to Evil Ted. Evil Ted sent me some molds, and I already casted and painted these two. And these two fit nice and snugly into there. I do glue them in, but believe it or not, they will just hold themselves in. That's how snug they fit. Because what I did was I measured these at the widest point and then made this to fit that. So that's how they sit in. And last, but very much not least, is a piece of 2mm foam along here that goes from here down to cover the sort of the bad bits. Again, you don't have to do that. It's why I'm not doing it on this prop during this tutorial, because I don't want you to feel like you have to do it. But I put a piece of 2mm foam down here, and I make sure there's a hole in it for this as well, and I put it down through here, and I glue it all on with contact cement. And then the last job is doing the handle. Now you can wrap this in anything you want. You can get a long strip of 2mm foam and you can wrap it up to make it look like leather. You could wrap this in leather. It's entirely up to you. What I do for the props that I've sold, and including the one on the image here, I will wrap this in 10mm foam, and then I'll add a detail piece at the front, a detail piece in the back, and then a pommel. This prop here is done in terms of the tutorial. The reason I am not doing this piece on the tutorial is because I'm going to be cutting this down. I'm going to be adding a skull. I'm going to be possibly adding a handguard here. There's a few bits and bobs I might be doing to this end of the chainsaw to modify it to make it my own. But everything from here to here is identical to how you can build it and how you can do it on the pattern that I sell on my Etsy. In terms of the actual build, that's it. That's how this chainsword goes together. You guys have been here for the entire video, just watching me build this, and hopefully at some point building along as well. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Let's switch back now, and I shall chat to you for the end of the video. And there we have it. The Iron Warrior Cosplay Human Scale Chainsword. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this build tutorial. I have been really having a lot of fun. I'm very tired. It's been a very long day. But this is what your chainsword will hopefully look like with whatever modifications you've done, with whatever paint job you've done. I really hope this is what your chainsword looks like, and I hope it's something that makes you happy, and I hope you feel fulfilled. I hope you feel like this is the one for you. I really hope you enjoyed this as much as I have. I've had so much fun building this. This chainsaw just looks really pretty, and I'm so happy with how it's turned out. If you guys enjoyed this tutorial, if you guys have watched it multiple times, please comment. Tell me how many times you've watched it. Tell me what you thought of the video. Let me know if you've built one of these. Let me know if you consider building one of these. If you have bought this pattern or any of my patterns, please let me know. I really appreciate it. I really love seeing and knowing that people appreciate my work as much that they want one of their own. And like I said, this chainsword will be completed. By the time this video goes out, this chainsword will probably be ready for priming or even sealing with roof sealer and then priming. I've got a few little bits I want to do. Like I said, I want to add a bit of a handguard. I want to shorten the handle, add a skull on the end. There's a few bits I want to do. I need to actually glue these on. But right now, this is what a completed chainsword looks like. Even with the slight things I need to do at the end, like to sort out the handle and add some 2mm foam, this is such a decent prop. I'm so happy with how it looks. It's not only is it lightweight, but it just works really well. It's super solid. Like, it just doesn't not want to give up. It's so nice. I enjoy it. I enjoy making these tutorials. I enjoy building it. I enjoy the prop at the end and the satisfaction I get from giving this information to you guys and going, here, this is how you build one of these. And then seeing you guys do it, it warms my heart. It makes me really, really happy. So for the last time for this video, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. I've been Iron Warrior Cosplay, and this has been the Warhammer Chainsaw tutorial. I shall see you all again very soon. Bye for now.